When we got to the restroom, Mr. Sanders took both cuffs off my arms. And it was in that moment that I considered that as an opportunity for me to get out of that jail and possibly get to Mississippi, a place where I felt safer. Um, when I went into the restroom area, I started to tear my jumpsuit off. And I was trying to get the leg irons off when Mr. Sanderson came into the bathroom and said it was time to go. At that moment, I decided that I was going to render Mr. Sanderson unconscious and possibly get his keys, take off the leg irons, and make a run for it. Mr. Sanderson, when I hit Mr. Sanderson with the metal brace, he immediately grabbed for his gun. Fearing that I'd get shot, I hit Mr. Sanders twice more, and we tussled for the gun. Being bigger and younger than Mr. Sanders, I was able to secure the weapon.
Now, we have covered many escapees who have then have to have parole with the whole Antoine Massey thing. We actually created a playlist for it. And this man's escape, probably on the top of the list. Not only did he disarm a 70-year-old sheriff's deputy who was escorting him to the hospital, but then when he got out, he disarmed another deputy, went on an insane police chase, picked up attempted murder charges, and then tried to hijack an older couple before finally getting caught, before finally being sentenced to 65 years in prison and serving the next 10 years in solitary confinement in the dungeons of Angola. But here he is over 20 years later, looking for a shot at redemption, looking for a chance at parole. But before we watch this 2025 parole hearing, we will do my favorite thing, and that is take a blast to the past to his 2023 hearing. So, with that, let's jump in.
So, Robert McKee, you're classified as a third felony offender. You're currently serving a 65-year sentence out of Washington Parish for attempted manslaughter, attempted second-degree kidnapping, aggravated battery, armed robbery, disarming a peace officer, and aggravated escape. Your parole eligibility date is determined to be December 29, 2021. Your good time date is June 26, 2060. Full term is December 26, 2066. Does that information sound correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your case has been assigned to me, so I'll start the interview process. So, Mr. McKee, how old are you, sir?
49.
And how long have you served so far?
21 years and some months.
So, a little over 21 years of a 65-year sentence.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Your prior offenses, I did mention you're classified as a third felony offender. I see in the state of Mississippi, robbery, where you got a 15-year sentence, possession of a CDS, you received a 4-year sentence, and then there was another conviction, Washington Parish, aggravated burglary, where you received a 4-year sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I see in November of 2004, there was an arrest for battery of a correctional officer, and that was null pros in 2006. But can you tell us about why you were arrested?
In the jail, there was a misunderstanding between me and a correctional officer. I was asking about my medication at the time. I was living in the St. Tammany Parish jail and not the Washington Parish jail because of the escape. The warden at that time was Warden Weeks. He came down to ask me what was the problem. I explained to him that I was not getting my medication, and I asked the CO about my medication. It wasn't a problem. I just asked when I was going to be transported. And Warden Weeks hit me and they wrestled me to the ground, and that was the end of the incident. They later booked me in on the charge, but later dropped it once some offenders came forward that witnessed the situation and attested to the fact that I did not hit Warden Weeks at no time.
And we do, as I mentioned, I do see that it was not crossed a little later in 2006. So for the offense that we're here today for, offenses, tell us what happened. What happened?
Well, in order for me to tell you, Ms. Renasa, exactly what happened, I would have to start from the beginning, but I promise I'll be brief. June, at a time where I should have been getting ready for my daughter's 2-year birthday party, I chose to come to Louisiana and try to rob a drug dealer. I failed in that and ended up going to the Washington Parish jail. When I got to the jail, I discovered that the drug dealer that I had tried to rob had family members that worked in the jail and also lived in the jail. From that point forward, I was attacked continuously by family members and friends of the drug dealer that I was trying to rob. This persisted for several months until finally I got a weapon that helped me ward off any attacks that may happen. Also, while the beatings was going on, I was being deprived of my medication for high blood pressure, asthma, and I had to be taken to the hospital several times because of it. In the course of that, I wrote several ARPs, wrote the ACLU, the Inspector General, the Secretary at that time was Richard Stalter. I wrote him trying to get some type of help with this situation. On December 28th, I became very sick. I couldn't breathe. I was sweating profusely. I was really in a bad place. I didn't know exactly what was wrong, but I just knew I was sick. So I stayed up all night because the policy was not to transport at night. So we was hoping that the next day someone would take us to the hospital. Mr. Irvin Sanderson, who was the deputy at that time, was alerted of the fact of my condition by my cellie. He came in, saw my condition, tried to get the head jailer at the time to approve him to take me to the hospital because he was the assigned patrol officer, although he wasn't working in that capacity that day. The head jailer refused to allow me to be transported. So Mr. Sanderson said, just hang in there. And so I tried to hang in there. He came and checked on me around 10 o'clock, close to lunchtime, and saw that I had gotten noticeably worse, decided that, okay, he had to call someone above me, above the head jailer. And so he contacted someone. Next thing I know, he called back to the cell block, told me to prepare to be transported to the
You
hospital.
eventually got to the hospital.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. What happened at the hospital?
Okay, once we got to the hospital, it took us 2 hours to get seen. When we finally was seen by the doctor, he gave me 2 breathing treatments, a nitroglycerin tablet, which brought my blood pressure down because he said it was in dangerous levels, and a steroid shot. And he told us to wait 30 minutes until this medication took effect because it was strong. During that period, Mr. Sanderson asked me whether or not I wanted to use the restroom or not. And before we traveled back to the jail, I said yes. And I went to the bathroom to use the bathroom. While I was in the bathroom, I became very reluctant about going back to the Washington Parish jail, going back into that situation. I felt a foreboding about going back. And I made a decision. At that point, I said I wasn't going back to the jail. And when Mr. Sanderson came in and told me it was time to go to the hospital, back to the jail, I hit Mr. Sanderson in the head with the weapon that I traditionally carried. I got his gun and left out of the hospital. And as I left out the hospital, I encountered Officer Stacy Economou, who I didn't know was an officer at the time because she was in a green van that was not marked. But when I recognized that she was an officer, she had gotten out and asked me what was going on in the hospital. I seen the badge and I pointed the weapon at her and told her I wasn't trying to hurt her. I just had to go. And she said she couldn't let me go. At that time, several units pulled in and canvassed the area. And I got behind Miss Economou because I figured I was exposed. I got behind her. And when I got behind her, suddenly she twisted away from me. I had my hand on her weapon at that time. And as she twisted away from me, her gun came free from the holster. I dived into.
Okay. Oh, still there? Okay, and then I have the details of what happened after.
Okay.
I already have them, all right? So tell me, I noticed that you were enrolled. I see your program participation looks like starting in 2017, you got your high set or your GED. You've done Cage Your Age in 2016, Living in Balance 2017, Thinking for Change 2017, Moral Compass 2021, and you have some club participation in various clubs. I also noticed you are enrolled in the Bible College.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
graduated, or you currently a senior?
Yes, ma'am. I am almost finished with the Bible college. The class that I need will not come back for a couple of years, but with that class, I graduate.
Very good. Well, good. Thanks for that hard work. And have you completed victim awareness?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us then what you believe your impact is on Stacy Cockrell, Tommy Sorrell, and the deputy, Mr. Sanders. Your actions. Tell us what impact you have.
I believe my actions that they shattered their confidence. I believe that because it was such an unprovoked act, I believe that it greatly impacted them, probably their family as well, because I know they was concerned with them being in that line of work and having a person come at them at the way that I did. I know that I impacted Mr. Sanderson greatly because he lost his job because of my actions. And you know, I heard the pain and the betrayal that he felt as a result of my actions. As he testified at trial, I had longed to reach out to them, but of course I couldn't because I could never really understand what they went through. But I do know that whatever they went through, they should not have went through it. And I should not have done what I done. I was selfish in what I done. I thought only of myself and my situation. And because of it, I know that all of our lives was greatly affected, but especially theirs because they did nothing but their job. I did everything.
What about their family? Did you had any impact on their family?
Yes, I definitely believe I had an effect on their family. With Mr. Sanderson losing his job, I know that greatly impacted his family. With Miss Economou, I can just imagine that, the damage I did to her property, putting her at risk of losing her life. I know that I caused harm to her family. I know that this is something that probably replayed in their mind years and years after the incident.
Okay. And You know, I have some concerns. I see that you have, you know, a history of violent offenses. You've got some good programs. You know, we talked about the incident with the at the local jail after the escape. When you got to Angola, you spent some time in CCR. Was that because of the escape history, or
Yes.
why?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did you stay in CCR?
I stayed in the CCR in solitary confinement for 12 years and another year in the CCR dorm at Camp C.
So you've been in general population about 10 years?
Well, more like 8.
8.
Yes, ma'am.
Where
Ma'am.
do you live now?
Where you live now?
Oh, I live now in Walnut 3, the new men's sobriety dormitory.
And I guess your job is full-time student. What is that your job?
I actually have several jobs, but in that dorm, I'm a mentor and a peer support sponsor. I'm also a family counsel substitute. I work on the outside carpentry crew, and I go to Bible college.
And you've had substance abuse, living in balance,
Yes, ma'am.
only substance abuse education you've had?
I've taken NAAA from Sober Group. I've taken Living in Balance 1 and 2, and you know, that in the new men sobriety program, I've graduated from that. That's how I became a sponsor.
Tell us about if you were to be successful and were granted parole at some point, what's your transition plan?
Well, immediately my transition plan will go to the Parole project, where I will participate in the program in there that, you know, learn how to better integrate myself into society successfully, as far as learning computer skills, how to
Yeah, we're familiar with their program. What
Okay.
happens after the parole project? After that.
beyond that. Well, one of the things that I have identified through the help of my attorney was a NA and AA near Parole project and near my home, where I would stay with my wife. That is something that I feel that I need, because I understand that I will always be an addict and I will always need that type of programming. I also have been in contact with First 72 Plus, and they have assured me that they have a family support group that I can join, where I will have other offenders who have successfully reintegrated to communicate with.
What is the Fort Supportive Transitional Home, Chalmette? What is that?
But Chalmette is actually ran by Brother Green. One of the things that they allow you to do is help facilitate within to my wife, and I wanted to be able to successfully reintegrate myself with my wife, because we never lived together, and they provide
Right,
stuff.
So that would be Parole Project and the transitional home in Chalmette, then to the
Yes.
wife that filed,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And then I saw something about there, and I guess we'll hear from your spiritual advisor. There was another plan, I think, in Portland, Maine.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell her the interstate.
Yes, ma'am. I was attempting to go to Maine when I had my first hearing set, but the interstate compact was denied
Okay. Because you don't have family.
because I didn't have family there.
Okay. Okay, well, I don't really have any other questions. I'll ask the warden if he has any comments. Warden Falgood?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, Robert has participated in programming, and I'll say that the charges greatly impacted his progression from going into trustee status from C to B to A. because of the escape, because of the impact with law enforcement. Despite that, again, very few write-ups, and for us here, have not had any issues with him.
Thank you. So I note in your record, I just have one more question, Mr. McKee, that you have a good institutional record in terms of write-ups. You've only had 3 write-ups. But I see in 2019, there were 38. Tell us about that. What was that?
Well, that was during the time me and my wife was preparing to get married. She had an uncle who lived at Camp C, and he was very concerned he would not be able to participate in the wedding. So while I was on the phone with my wife, she would routinely bring him onto the call so that I would be the one to explain exactly what was being done to bring him to the main prison. And we didn't
Three-way
know.
call. So it was about a 3-way call.
Yeah, 3-way call. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
All right. That's enough information. Ms. Wise has a question.
There was also, good morning. There was also a plan about going to work in Mississippi at the state prison.
Yes, ma'am. I have been offered a job to go work in Mississippi as well. But I feel that right now, me and my wife never had an opportunity to build on our marriage. And I feel that before I can commit to something like that, I at least owe it to her to, try to work on our marriage and build it stronger before I just make a commitment such as that.
Oh, okay, to be a chaplain at, be on the chaplain staff, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's definitely something that we have considered and we have discussed. And it's something that may be very viable for me because I would love to have the opportunity to go into that community and help it, being that I was such a destructive force in that community. I would love to have that opportunity.
All right, thank you. That's all I had, Jim.
All right. I don't see any other questions from our colleagues, so we would like to hear from your wife now, Miss Yolanda.
Stand next to him.
Go ahead, ma'am. That's okay.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning on behalf of my husband, Robert McKee. I'm so sorry. I do have to give reverence to God Almighty for allowing this blessed day to happen. Thank you. Robin and I became acquainted with one another back in January of 2018, and we were married September 6, 2019. I'm truly blessed to have Robert as my husband, the love of my life, my soulmate, but most of all, my best friend. Robert has overcome a lot of obstacles throughout his life, and I'm extremely proud of the man that he is today. As his wife, I'm fully prepared to take responsibility to provide for my husband financially, a home to live in, and transportation to and from work. I am a retired U.S. Navy veteran. I do receive full benefits from the military, and I do have a full-time job. If this board allow Robert to be released, I know in my heart that Robert will be the best husband to me, a wonderful father to our children, and a fantastic grandfather to our grandchildren. Robert would be a great asset to the community by giving back unconditionally, a great mentor to a lot of children, a lot of our family members and friends. I'm fully aware of Robert's past and the person he was over 20 years ago. He is no longer that man any longer. The man that I have grown to love and fall in love with is a totally different person from back then. Our family and friends will forever be grateful if this board will vote for Robert to grant him parole. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Mr. Higgins.
Members of the board, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of Robert. Partner Pamela and I have traveled here from Maine to be with Robert because we believe him very much. I've known Robert since 2008. I met him through writeaprisoner.com. It was never my intention to become his spiritual advisor or anything. It was, I saw a man that I seemed to recognize when I saw his face online, and I reached out to him as a man, and I've treated him as I would any other man in this world. And when Robert first received my letter, he had to think about it a little bit before he responded. He'd never been approached by somebody like me, been treated by like somebody like me, you know, as a real human being. And when he did write back, he has told me that it opened his eyes to realize that he could be more than what life expected out of him. You know, he made promises to his mom to finish his education, but in his mind, there was always a ceiling. You know, that meant getting a GED. Through our interaction in the years up until I became a spiritual advisor, he began to see more and more clearly that he was and could be much more than what he thought himself to be. And if you were to look back through the hundreds of letters, you know, listen to the phone calls that we've had, you could almost feel the point of where there was a change inside of him. That, you know, he was a man before all else. You know, and we hear people say that, you know, he's a different man now. But you know, there's always a part of Robert's past that's going to be part of him. But the question is, you know, what that's done to him. You know, and Robert, I've seen, you know, has recognized what he has done, realized what he's done, and that's a part of him. But it affects him differently now. He's more mature. You know, when he talks about how he impacted people, you know, we've had countless discussions on the choices that he made, you know, not only in the crimes that he's done, but in the people in his past that he's felt remorse for, that he wished he'd treated better. It's an astonishing realization to feel that he could do something with those feelings and transform them into something else. And he has a strong desire to take that recognition within himself and his place in the world to help other people, to at-risk youth. You know, he's developed a very comprehensive nonprofit plan that he hopes to implement someday. I mean, it's just amazing to me to see. And I have to say that his impact on mine, though I'm his spiritual advisor, you know, I think that that role in the past 15 years has been equal. He's helped me through a difficult time of divorce and times of my own life. You know, he was outside of myself, and like we were two parts of one man. You know, we were two prisoners. He was a prisoner of body. I was a prisoner of mind and spirit. And together we have made two men, I think. And I have to say that we have brought him into the lives of many people in our community. And you know, we tried to make a plan for him in Portland, you know, and he developed a rapport with the director at the Friendship House there. He has had a huge impact on all those people. And we have people from across the country that we've introduced him to, across the world, really, in New Zealand and Australia, he has impacted their lives. And so I just know that given the chance, he will bring great goodness to this world. And he is so sorry within his heart. I know he is. I've heard the pain. I've felt it. But I think also that's helped to bring him to a better place. And I'm sorry that people had to suffer for that. But he's taken this to heart, and he's taken it to spirit, and he's taken it to the Lord. And we all pray that we give him a chance to be a part of the world, because I think he's reached the limit of what he can do here. He worked so hard here in the prison to improve other people's lives. I think the world deserves to have Robert back with them. So thank you so much for this time and opportunity.
Sir, thank you for traveling such great distance to participate. Here now from Vicki Dane.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you very much for letting me speak today. I'm over in the UK. I'm 41. I've known Robert since 2007 for 15 years. We've communicated with each other regularly across this period by letter, email, videogram. By profession, I'm a qualified clinical psychologist. I also have a past career as a qualified UK lawyer, but today I'm here to speak in a personal capacity in support of Robert's character as his friend. Throughout the 15 years I've known Robert, I've experienced him as a reflective, empathic, generous and humble person, always striving for self-improvement and to share what he has learned with other people. Examples of these character traits that I have seen across the years. Reflectiveness. In my work as a clinical psychologist, I work with people who have experienced adversity while growing up, and I have seen in them positive post-traumatic growth as a result from their being reflective on their experiences. I've also witnessed this same growth in Robert. I've never seen him wallow in self-pity or look to blame others for the situation that he found himself in being incarcerated. Instead, I've always seen him strive to understand how he got into that situation, to work out what he needed to do to make amends, and learn how to make wiser choices in the future. I've seen not just philosophical reflection guided by his faith and relationship with God, but I also saw pragmatic change through the engagement that he made with targeted, relevant prison programs. He's talked about many of those with me over the years. I honestly actually can't keep track of how many there were, but some of them that he mentioned were being particularly proud to get his GED. The trials and tribulations of trying to study to be a paralegal, notably working on his anger management, and really in particular, the strong focus has always been his religious studies and how important that's been to him. I'm aware as well that he's done practical work roles while in the prison community. He mentioned being a barber. He's mentioned some of the other ones today. Again, there's been so many I can always keep track. Empathy. Robert has always been a consistently stable, kind, and wise voice to me during my own difficult periods. He's also been there to celebrate and share in the positive times in my life, such as when I have my children. In spite of the obvious differences in our privileges, experiences, and backgrounds, he's always been there for me, and he's understood my own life experiences. I really value his advice and his unwavering emotional support that he's provided me with. Generosity. What I've always seen in Robert is a motivation not just to learn and grow as a person for himself, but also so that he can pass on his learning to others. I've seen him not only make peace with the events that were out of his control that he experienced as a young person that led to where he is today, but also strive to find ways to intervene to help other people, young people, people who've experienced similar challenges that he's been through. He's always been generous in his time and energy to give me. He's always asked about me and pulled me out when I've just been focusing on him and made sure that there's time for me, and he's invested in my care too. With all of this in mind, it really seems to me it would be such an unnecessary waste of such a valuable potential contribution that Robert could make in terms of supporting other people who have experienced similar challenges if he's not released. He has a wealth of experience, learning, wisdom, energy, and kindness ready to share with others that would make a huge difference for the better. Lastly, I want to state I will always be here to support Robert as a friend in any way that I can, as I believe that what he has got to share with the world is so valuable. If he is released, I am committed to supporting him in the transition process and in the future in any way that I possibly can. I really urge you to grant parole to Robert, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for joining us from the UK. We appreciate it. All right, I think that's all who are speaking in support. Now we'd like to hear from opposition, Ms. Tommy Sorrell.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you for having me here. I've been patiently listening and watching. I can tell you that everybody that spoke on Mr. McKee's behalf have only known him since he's been locked up. I can tell you that I've encountered him whenever he was out, when he was free. It's a very different man. The first time that I dealt with him was with the aggravated burglary. I was working the night whenever he did break into the house. And I would like him to maybe explain the drug dealer's mother that was there and what he did to her. He's a very violent man. I responded to the hospital, an officer in need of assistance. Whenever I was pulling up to the hospital, I saw Robert McKee running from the front of the hospital. I knew that immediately that he was the reason that I was responding to the call. He wasn't in prison uniform, but it was premeditated. He had brought that weapon with him. He did wear street clothes under his uniform. And whenever he asked the deputy to unshackle him so he could defecate, the deputy trusted him, unshackled him, and he viciously beat him in the head, leaving him on the floor in a pool of blood. What made it even worse is this deputy was elderly, retired from one profession, but working to supplement like his income in an older profession. So he was in his 70s. He was a trusting person. And Mr. McKee, as you can see, is a rather large man. And there was no sense in him beating this man down, this elderly man down, who did lose his career after that because he was scared to death. It did impact his life. Stacy Economou, she was a brand new officer at the time that had been working with me, and I was her field training officer. She actually was across the street in her green van, and she was going to drop a Christmas present off to an employee that worked at the business. As Mr. McKee came running out, I could see the deputy's gun in his hand moving up and down, up and down. He ran straight to Stacy Economou, grabbed hold of her, put the gun to her head, like I could see the muzzle like against her skin. And he was wrestling with her, trying to throw her into the van. And she did tussle with him. Me and another officer had pulled up, and I actually got in front of them with my unit in order to prevent him from taking her. She broke away from him. He, at that point, had her gun, jumped into the van, and tried to run me over with her van. I shot my shotgun into the vehicle. It missed him. It went a little bit high, but I was in the process of running to keep him from running over me. And then he fired several shots at me after he turned and continued. No regard for life. He continued at a very high rate of speed. And then there was a mother with her teenage son that he T-boned, probably going 85 miles an hour. Both of them were severely injured. He continued a few miles down the road until he entered Mississippi. Once he entered Mississippi, the van became disabled due to the crash, and he ran off the road. Well, then he jumped out of the van, continued with the gun in his hand, running. We're chasing him, giving him commands to drop the gun, to stop running. And at that point, there was an elderly couple that was approaching us in their vehicle. Now, this couple probably was 80 years old. We're screaming at them, like, get back, stop, back up. Well, he ran straight toward this vehicle, the gun in his hand, pointed it at both occupants. You could see the fear in their eyes And the only reason that I'm here today and he's here today is because as he was beating against the car with the gun, trying to make them open the vehicle so he could either abduct them or throw them out or carjack him or God only knows what, the gun came out of his hand and we were able to physically take him into custody. Do I think that he needs to be released back on society? Absolutely not. I do appreciate that he's going through rehabilitation, but I don't think he's been there long enough yet. He did try to kill me. He tried to kill Stacy. And thank God he didn't kill the deputy that he beat in the head. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sorrell, for your participation today. We appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McKee, before we turn it over to your attorney, is there a brief statement you'd like to make to the panel?
Yes, ma'am. That day was a horrible day. I made a lot of horrible decisions that day. But the intent to take anyone's life was never my intention. I accept full responsibility for what I done. If I could turn back that clock, I would. But since that moment, since that time in my life, I have worked tirelessly trying to get my life back together, trying to find out what was broken inside of me that would make me make a decision that would impact so many different lives continuously. I could never undo what I done. And no amount of time could ever atone for the harm that I caused. But what I can do is move forward with my life and continue to try to help people with the same intensity that I hurt people, and try to prevent other young men who come from the same type of background I came from making the same bad choices I did. My heart goes out to those officers, Ms. Sorrow. Obviously, I hurt her, and and to hear her, it breaks my heart because I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted to get out of a bad situation. I wanted to save my life. And I'm sorry that I had to sacrifice, I had to hurt other people as a result of that. That's all, man.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Cameron?
Good. I don't know if it's morning or afternoon, but good, whatever. I'm honored to speak on behalf of Robert McKee today, who's both a friend and a client. Robert was forced into survival mode at a very young age. He was raised by a single mother who had mental health issues that prevented her from properly being able to care for him. They spent most of his youth living in homeless shelters. In order to survive and take care of his mother, Robert went to work when he should have been worried about homework, sports, and playing on the playground. Robert did whatever he could to earn money for himself and his mother, turning to the kids in the neighborhood who taught him how to pickpocket and steal purses. One day, while Robert was out hustling money, his mother was taken to a hospital after having been raped by two men in the shelter. This incident still affects Robert to this day. When she was released from the hospital, Emma McKee went to a mental hospital for about 6 months while Robert remained on the streets, fending for himself at only 13 years old. He figured out he could make easy money selling drugs and began doing so in addition to stealing from others to pay his mother's medical bills. He actually felt like a success when he was able to pay rent for an apartment where he and his mother stayed until he was sent to Parchman Prison in Mississippi at just the age of 16. He spent 7 years in the Mississippi prison system, enduring things that most of us don't even want to think about. But he learned how to survive there too. He learned how to navigate that system, but was still always on guard in case things went wrong. When he left the Mississippi system, he had not had a chance to grow. He recognizes that he was still that 16-year-old boy he had been when he arrived. In 2001, he was picked up and charged with robbing someone. Little did he know that the person he robbed was related to both guards and inmates within the jail. Those relationships caused Robert serious hardships that triggered his need to survive again. It was that survival mode that led to the terrible decisions he made on December 29, 2001. In Robert's mind at that moment in the hospital, he knew he could not go back to that jail and that he had to survive. Every decision he made that day was rooted in that survival instinct. He knew he had been relatively safe in Mississippi and was focused on getting back there. I say relatively safe because that safety is probably not something you or I would call safe, but it's what Robert knew. He just wanted to get back to Mississippi. He wanted to live. As a result of the decisions that day, he was put into solitary confinement here in Angola, where he would remain locked up in a cell by himself for 13 years until 2016. A cell, alone, limited interaction with others, where he could finally breathe and not worry about making money or protecting his mother. Although Robert doesn't look back on his time in solitary very fondly, being alone in a place where he could lay his head and not worry about what was coming next gave him the space to figure out who he was and who he wanted to be. For the first time in his life, he could stop fighting, be still, and reflect on the man he had become. In 2007, earlier in that incarceration in solitary, Robert had a very frank discussion with his mom. And as moms will do, she made sure that Robert knew how much she loved him and reminded him that she had always believed in him. She told Robert he could do and become anything he set his mind to, and made him promise that no matter what happened in his life, he would get an education. Tragically, Robert lost his mother just a week later. For Robert, that conversation with his mother became a catalyst for change. He began thinking about who he was and realized he needed to change because he didn't like what he saw. He quickly began advocating for himself to get access to the little bit of programming offered in the cell blocks. He wanted to use the system to prosper and develop his character, and that is exactly what he has done. He became engaged in the only programming available to him, which was church. And when the preacher who had been coming to the cell block stopped showing up, Robert fought for his ability to attend services. For 9 years, Robert wrote letters to the powers that be, trying to get himself released from the cell blocks. He had been a model prisoner throughout that time with only a single write-up. He told the wardens and even Jimmy LeBlanc that he would do right and be a better person if they would just let him into general population so he could begin his education. As soon as he was released from solitary, he began taking those classes and finding ways to improve himself and his future. At the time, he was facing 65 years in prison with no possibility of parole, but it didn't matter. He was focused on his education and fulfilling that promise he made to his mother. He became a legal assistant in the law library, fighting for both himself and others. He takes great pride in his legal work that he does on behalf of others and has been instrumental in assisting many people in their ability to leave this facility, even while he was stuck with no way out himself. He's a passionate advocate for others and can often be found preparing people for their pardon and parole hearings or preparing legal work for court. He thinks of others before himself, which is apparent in his work both as a substance abuse mentor in the New Men Addiction Ministry sobriety dorm, and the fact that he's written some of their curriculums. As you can see from his packet, he's been really busy since 2016. He's completed all the required courses the board prefers. He knew what he needed to be done and he did it. The difference is that when Robert was young, he was reacting to the circumstances forced upon him, whereas now he's creating circumstances through his own actions. The Robert that sits before the board today is an example of redemption and rehabilitation. as a result of his own actions and his intent to maximize the use of the programming offered to him. He sought out educational programs and effected change in his own life, and he continues to do so even today. He told you he's only one math class short of getting his bachelor's degree from the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. And just since he was supposed to be in front of this board in August, he's earned his trustee status, become a part of the outside carpentry crew, and completed the victim awareness class. He has a network of family support ready to assist him in his reentry. Y'all heard from all of them today, Miss Yolanda, Mr. Ted, whose life Robert affected in such a profound way that he's been coming up here for over a decade. And all of his family are able and willing to support him in any way he needs when he goes home, and will provide a stable environment for him where he will never have to worry about surviving again. As he told the board today, he's got a solid employment plan and a transition program. He actually chose the transition program where he would go through the two different programs so that he and his wife had time to go through couples counseling and build their relationship so it will last the solid foundation that will last the test of time. Ultimately, Robert plans to use his story and what he's learned during incarceration to make a difference in the lives of children who are suffering from the same home life he was years ago. He wants to intervene in the lives of those children so they aren't forced to endure the things he did and end up on the wrong path like he did. Robert McKee survived the trials and tribulations of his youth, has thrived during his time here in Angola, and will use those experiences as his testimony if this board grants him the opportunity for release. We humbly ask that you find that the work that Robert has done throughout his incarceration here at Angola demonstrates both growth and redemption, showing that he's ready and able to be a successful, contributing member of society, and that you vote to grant him parole today. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. McKee, I think we're prepared to vote, and I'll be voting first. Your case was assigned to me. I reflect, and I've listened to Ms. Sorrell, and she didn't tell you she suffered for years after the incident that happened to her and her fellow officers. The other victim, who is also one of the other victims, who's also opposed, really lost a lot as well. Suffered post-traumatic stress syndrome. It impacted her children. Her marriage dissolved as a result of it, and that's profound. Mr. Sanderson's family is opposed, and he's deceased now, but his family is very strongly opposed because it affected the rest of the family. So your case is difficult, although I've listened very carefully to all the things that your attorney has said on your behalf, your wife, and the things that she said, Mr. Higgins, and your visitor from the Miss Dane from the United Kingdom. I've listened very carefully. And what I notice is, I asked you the question I asked you about CCRs because I know what that means, being locked up in CCR and how long, and then where did you go after that? I had reasons to ask you those questions, and I note that you did go to work when you got out of CCR, and you have applied yourself. You engaged in activities that help others. You're a little too wordy today. I wasn't really pleased with some of your responses that you gave me, but I understand the situation you're in. But I'm impressed with the service you've done for others and where you've come. I'm willing to take a chance on you. My vote would be to grant you parole. Now, it does require unanimous vote today. If you were granted, I would add special conditions. You have absolutely no contact with the victims, any of the victims or their families, that you do complete your degree, and that you do enroll in and complete the couples counseling, and that you perform community service work, working with at-risk youth. 4 hours. I'm just one vote, but that's my vote. Mrs. Wise?
Mr. McKee, I've really been back and forth. I've listened intently as well. I didn't realize that the officer was elderly. So you didn't need that much violence.
Yes, ma'am.
You just ran away, you know. Once your shackles was loose, you know, you didn't need that violence. And I'm wrestling with that. So looking at who you are today and how you presented today and the community that you have created, it bears for me to take a chance on you as well. My voice to grant, you do have a good institutional record, you have good club interactions, and again, the community that you built around yourself. And I concur with the special conditions that's been set forth with the added special condition of random drug screens by probation and parole.
Jeffrey?
I do too find myself struggling. You know, it definitely was premeditated. You had the weapon, you had your clothes on. But then you went through 12 years in solitary confinement and came out and jumped right back into all of the programs and done pretty much anything and everything we could ask. So today I'm also going to grant, but I'm going to add the condition that you be placed on electronic monitoring and that you stay away from the victims.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Jackson?
All right, Mr. McKee, this is a hard case because of the facts of what happened in this case. But if that's the only thing we ever decide a case on, nobody would ever plead. What we do is look at what you've accomplished for yourself, but also what you've accomplished for others. I can't imagine 12 years in solitary confinement. And yet that didn't break you, it motivated you, it gave you the opportunity to assess yourself. And then when you got out with a mindset that you wanted to right your wrong. I appreciated the fact you fully acknowledged your actions and the fact that you really have given reflection to the harm you caused your victim, because I thought your responses to that were very thoughtful. You have only 3 write-ups in the time that you served. And not only have you worked on yourself, but you have worked at certain levels. And that speaks volumes to me about the man you are today, as opposed to the person that you were 21 years ago. So for me, I think you've done everything that you could possibly do. There's nothing more that you can accomplish. And so my vote today was to grant parole.
Mr. Roach?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good morning, Mr. McGee.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. McGee, I agree with everything all 4 of my colleagues have said. This is a very difficult case. This is a very difficult case. And what you have to understand, Mr. McGee, my role on the Committee on Parole is different from all the other members. I am the victim's advocate. I am the victim's advocate. And we must keep the victims of this crime within this process. There are 3 reasons that I think the state of Louisiana incarcerates an individual. First reason is isolation. They want to isolate that individual because of his negative behavior. The second reason is to rehabilitate this individual. So when he comes out, that he will be a productive member of society. I don't think there's any need to isolate you anymore, simply because I think you've been rehabilitated. You have a history of violence. And that violence has kept you in trouble most of your adult life. You have a long, high history of criminal activity, and most of that is of violent nature. You have 2 felony convictions in the state of Mississippi. But I don't think we need to isolate you anymore. I don't think we can rehabilitate you any more than you are. But when it comes to the third reason that we incarcerate an individual, and that's retribution. Retribution for your crime. You have a 65-year sentence. And basically, I think it was a fair sentence. You have not served 1/3 of that sentence. You served 21 years. And that's not even 1/3 of your sentence. You have victims who are still physically, mentally, and emotionally affected by crimes that you perpetrated. Premeditatedly and deliberately beat an old man, held a police officer at gunpoint, accosted her, stole an automobile, and erratically drove cities of Louisiana and Mississippi. Based upon insufficient time served for a premeditated and deliberate violent act against law enforcement, a history of violence, the entire legal community, the judge, the DA's office, the sheriff's office, and the chief of police are adamantly opposed, and you have multiple victims adamantly opposed to your release. I deny your request.
All right, Mr. McKee, as I explained when we started, yours does require a unanimous vote. So you received 4 favorable votes, but 1 vote to deny parole. So today your parole has been denied, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
And there's nothing like a Mr. No Way Roche mic drop. I have quoted that epic saying so many times from covering other states and other parole hearings. Yes, there are 3 reasons for incarceration, but these other states always seem to forget the retribution aspect of it, where they will actually say, after they hear a victim cry, there is no reason for you to be in prison anymore. You're rehabilitated. What's the point in keeping you here? How many times have we heard parole board members out of the state of Connecticut or the state of Iowa make those statements? Well, how about retribution? You know, this was an interesting case. First, we have to listen to the supporters calling in from all over the world, and they're the butterflies and the flying turtles and the this and the that, and these long, dragged out speeches. And then you hear from just one of the people involved in that case with the shotgun, and she, just talks about this night of mayhem, and she paints a picture. And apparently, he had a longer record. And we're gonna go now and jump to 2025 hearing, by the way. So we're going to go and see what has changed in the past 2 years and if he'll get parole. But just a few things that I'm going to get off my chest before we do that, and then we'll go into more of an official unpacking because I am eager to see it, is again just how violent his history was. So what happened is it seems that he robbed a drug dealer. The what's her name alluded to uh what he beat up the drug dealer's mom, right? That was crazy. You do get a picture. It was Tommy who said that, of someone who is extremely violent. But there are flip sides to this. To spend 12 years in solitary confinement in Angola, to not lose your mind, to come out and then build this network, which is impressive. You don't see a lot of people do that. It does say something about you. And to do all these programs and do all these great things, it is impressive. I think the bottom line, but his attorney, I just don't like his attorney. I don't know what you guys feel about her, but I can't stand her. Ugh. Ugh. Anyways, let's go jump into the 2025 hearing, then we'll go over the information that Lady Holly compiled for us. So with that, let's jump in.
Mr. McKee, you've been through the process before, so you're kind of familiar with it. Let me just
Yes,
read
ma'am.
the identifying information into the record. You are classified as a third felony offender, currently serving a 65-year sentence. You were sentenced in Washington Parish in February of 2005. You have attempted manslaughter, attempted second-degree kidnapping, an aggravated battery, armed robbery, disarming a peace officer, and aggravated escape. Different sentences for each of those convictions, but they're all running concurrent, and it's a total of 65 years. Your parole eligibility date was December 29th, 2021. You do have a good time release date, which is in June of 2060. Is that information correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so we do it a little different maybe than the last time. We want to take your statement first. We'd like to hear from you. Explain to the panel, for those who weren't on your last hearing, why are you in jail? And why do you think you're a good candidate for early release?
All right. Well, thank you, board. In June 26, 2001, I made a decision to rob a drug dealer. That decision landed me in the Washington Parish jail, where the drug dealer had family and friends that was present in the jail. Shortly after arriving, I was beaten by 9 individuals. The beatings, that was the first of many beatings that I received in the 6 months I was there. I lived in fear of my life, for my life in that jail, never knowing when or if an attack was coming. I took to carrying a metal brace for protection to possibly ward off any attacks. I was also being deprived of my asthma and high blood pressure medications. On December 28, 2001, I became very sick. I had headaches. I was having trouble breathing, and efforts to try to get medical assistance was denied. On December 29, 2001, the day of the incident, Deputy Irvin Sanderson took one look at me and said I needed to go to the hospital. And so he called the head warden, and the head warden gave him approval to take me to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, I was given a nitroglycerin tablet to lower my blood pressure, 2 breathing treatments, and a shot. While we was waiting for the doctor to release us, Mr. Sanderson asked me whether I wanted to use the restroom. When we got to the restroom, Mr. Sanderson took both cuffs off my arms. And it was in that moment that I considered that as an opportunity for me to get out of that jail and possibly get to Mississippi a place where I felt safer. When I went into the restroom area, I started to tear my jumpsuit off. And I was trying to get the leg irons off when Mr. Sanderson came into the bathroom and said it was time to go. At that moment, I decided that I was gonna render Mr. Sanderson unconscious and possibly get his keys, take off the leg irons and make a run for it. Mr. Sanderson, when I hit Mr. Sanderson with the metal brace, he immediately grabbed for his gun. Fearing that I'd get shot, I hit Mr. Sanderson twice more, and we tussled for the gun. Being bigger and younger than Mr. Sanderson, I was able to secure the weapon. Once I got the weapon, I assured Mr. Sanderson that I didn't want to hurt him. I just wanted to go. I took the leg irons out. I ran out the hospital. And once I got out the hospital, I seen a green van coming towards me. That van had Officer Stacy Economo in it. She asked me what was going on in the hospital. I told her that someone was trying to escape. I didn't immediately recognize her as a deputy at that time. But as we was talking, that's when a lot of police, Bogalusa police officers started pulling into the area. Miss Economo reached for a weapon. I then drew Mr. Sanders' weapon and pointed it at her, at which time I told her that I didn't want to hurt her, I just wanted to go. She said she could not let me go. At a quandary of what to do, feeling exposed, I got behind Miss Economo. I put my hand over her gun to keep her from drawing it. She thought I was taking it. So we kind of tussled over the gun, the weapon that she had. And all of a sudden she rolled away from me. She rolled away from me, and not really knowing why she rolled away at that time, I just instinctively jumped into the van. And when I jumped into the van, I heard shots. I was on the floorboards. I got up in the seat, preparing to leave. But when I raised up, I seen Sergeant Tommy Sorrow standing in front of the van with a shotgun pointed directly at my head. To avoid being shot, I immediately cut the wheel to the right and headed towards the road that led to Mississippi, narrowly missing Miss Sorrow, who was in close proximity. Her and her cruiser were close proximity to the van. As I'm headed down the highway at a high rate of speed, a white van pulled out in front of me. I tried to avoid hitting it directly, but I did hit the van. In that moment, I wanted to see what was, how the people that was in the van was doing, but my goal was to get to Mississippi. I had to get to Mississippi. So as I'm traveling down the highway, the van gives out at the bridge. I get out the van, I'm running, and as I'm coming down the bridge, I see a gray car coming towards me. I run to the car, I yank on the door handle, it was locked. I started banging on the roof, telling them to open the car. And I looked in the car and that's when I seen the fear. I seen the fear on the faces of the occupants of that car. And it was at that moment right there, I realized, exactly all that I have done in that moment. And I laid the weapon on top of the car and I followed the instructions that the officers, who by that time had caught up with me, was telling me to do. And they took me into custody.
This couple probably was 80 years old. We're screaming at them, like, get back, stop, back up. Well, he ran straight toward this vehicle, the gun in his hand, pointed it at both occupants. You could see the fear in their eyes. And the only reason that I'm here today and he's here today is because as he was beating against the car with the gun, trying to make them open the vehicle so he could either abduct them or throw them out or carjack him or God only knows what. The gun came out of his hand and we were able to physically take him into custody.
There are no words to explain exactly how remorseful I am for the action that I took that day. I was in a bad situation. I cared about nobody but my own well-being. The situation snowballed in a way that I could not have predicted, but nevertheless, I'm fully responsible for the actions that I took. My biggest regret is hurting Mr. Sanderson, a person who generally tried to help me. As long as I was in that jail going through what I was going through, nobody else really reached out and tried to help me, but Mr. Sanderson did. So that's something that I have always regretted. When I got here to Angola, they placed me in CCR, which is solitary confinement, where I remained for over a decade. And it was in that time, in that cell, that I really came to grips with not only that particular incident, but the state of my life in its entirety. I came to understand that any violence against people only creates a void that could never be filled. And I never wanted to be that person again. I never wanted to be a person who, out of fear, will hurt other people or use the opportunity to try to make myself feel secure while making them feel insecure. So I stayed in the cell for over 10 years. I got out and I immediately started trying to fix me because I knew I was broken and I needed to understand exactly why I made the decisions that I made throughout my life. I found that in a lot of classes that I took. Thinking for a Change, for one, is one of the classes that I took that helped me challenge my thinking. It helped me understand exactly how my choices led to risky behavior. And it helped me a lot. But more than anything, victim awareness was the best class that I ever took because it helped me understand the ripple effect violent crime has on not only the people that you hurt, but also the whole community.
All right, well, we're gonna move on. I appreciate you have quite a vivid memory of what happened. I appreciate the details and I appreciate you calling the name of each of your victims. We don't usually hear that and it's meaningful. We're gonna have some more questions for you in just a minute, but I want to ask Warden Van Noy, what can you tell us about Mr. McKee?
Well, he's a minimum age trustee. He lives on the East Yard in Mag 4, and his job is an inmate counsel. Since 2019, he's only had 3 DB reports. He's had lots of programming. He talked to you about a couple of them. He got his BA from the NOBTS in August of 24. He's a certified mentor. He's got digital literature, 100 hours substance abuse, physical counsel substitute training, anger management, thinking for a change, Malachi Dads, moral compass, victim awareness, and letter training.
Wow.
So he's done a lot of programming since he's been out of CCR.
All right, good to hear. Thank you, sir. So let me hear from the folks there at Angola that want to speak on behalf of Mr. McKee. Could we hear from Mr. Higgins first?
Yes, ma'am.
You said they see you better.
Yeah, they can
They can see me better.
Yeah, they can hear
Okay. Good morning to the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Mr. McKee. I've known Robert since 2008. We started the correspondence. I eventually became his spiritual advisor as we became more and more involved. From the beginning, I was struck by Mr. McKee's drive to better himself. He was still in CCR at the time, had been there close to 10 years, I believe. And I was amazed that he could have presence of mind and being to really improve himself. You know, in that type of environment where there were no educational opportunities or religious opportunities or anything at all. You know, he was estranged from his family, and yet he was determined he had hope and faith that he would be released from CCR, and when he did, he was ready and raring to educate himself, to take classes, to give back, and he was astonishing, you know. And you know, though I was his spiritual advisor, many times I felt that he was my spiritual advisor, and that we complemented each other. But not once in all the time that I've known him have I ever found him to be insincere and less truthful, and he was blatantly honest with, you know, what he had done and how he felt about it. And so, you know, he's become family to us because he's the type of man that I want in my family. And I think that his concern of other people who have similar backgrounds, you know, he's wants to dedicate his life to helping other people raise themselves up from situations like this, or to even keep them from coming into situations like this. And so we support him 100%. I think that he's done all he can in here. You know, he's a man who belongs in a bigger setting to really help people. And, you know, I can say that in all honesty. And, you know, it's easy for a good man to pretend he's bad than a bad man to pretend he's good. You know, there's a phenomenal man inside of us right here, and he will bring a lot of good to the world if he's given a chance to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Knowles?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead,
Good
we'd
morning.
like,
Yeah, I've been knowing Robert since childhood, grew up together. And I can honestly say that the man that I see when I come up here is, to say, not even a shell of the man that he once was. He's totally transformed, totally changed. And it ain't no in between, ain't no fence straddling. You know, I can genuinely say that this is a totally different person. If I was having this conversation the 23 years ago that he's been here, it would be nothing like the conversation that I'm having now. You know, I remember when Robert came to Delta State to see me in college. And that was probably the calmest that I had ever seen him. And I can tell that he was just glad to be away from down on the coast where we grew up at, where he wasn't always looking over his shoulder or behind his back. And he supposed to came for a weekend. But luckily I had a private room because he ended up staying 2 weeks. And when I left Delta State and came back down to the coast, he had gotten into this incident here, and all this right here went on and came about. And then when I came up here to see him, and he was telling me all the schooling that he had while he was here, I'm like, man, he got more schooling than I got out there. And all the degrees and stuff that he got. And I just think about how back then when I was in school, that how he liked being at the campus and being around positive stuff. And that was a side to him that I had never seen. And so I remember when we were younger, and the only time I could see him just not full of rage and anger is when he stayed with me and my grandma because growing up without his dad in his life and just staying with his mom and I always want to just protect his mom from, kids young and kids just be brutally honest and they laughed and picked and his mom had a speech impediment. So he always would end up fighting about kids drinking or teasing about that. So it's a lot that I can say because I was there from the beginning to now. But like I say, in between now and then is just being plainly honest and as truthful as I can be. I never thought that I would meet Rob. I always knew Yogi. And now I don't know Yogi, I know Robert. And Yogi and Robert are entirely two different people. And I'm glad to see that the man that he's become, that he is now. And I'm also glad that, I hate to say it like that he had to come here because if not, he'd probably be dead or killed somebody else. But now, the man that I'm looking at now, there's no way I can think that. He reformed, whatever you want to call it. And I thank the state of Louisiana for it.
Sir, we appreciate hearing from you today. That was, Mr. Myers, could we hear from the Parole Project?
Yes, good morning, Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. A lot of things have already been said. I'm not going to just go over everything. I'm sure Ms. Cameron will also sum it all up. We've been working with Mr. McKee since his previous hearing for two reasons. Number one, his portfolio, and he's only increased that since his last hearing. As you know, you can have two things that can happen on a denial. One is to quit, give up, spiral, or take it for what it is and continue on. He's just done that and excelled. We plan to provide Mr. McKee with transitional services. We will, after 24 years in incarceration, obviously, there are things that he will need to decompress to learn upon his release. We'll provide those services. He has long-term support system. You can see the support system he has there, but he has long-term resident support. And we're just, Mr. McKee's honest recognition of the harm he's caused and the steps he's taken to do that. He's a mentor. He's just taken stock of his entire life. And it leads us to know that he's going to succeed. Whatever this board decides today, he's going to succeed. But he would be an asset to our program. He would be an asset to his community. And we would ask this board to consider granting his parole today.
All right, thanks, sir. Ms. Cameron, could we hear from you?
Yes, ma'am. I'm honored to speak on Robert's behalf this morning. He is a client, a colleague, and a friend. At the last hearing, it was noted that no one who spoke at that hearing knew Robert prior to his current incarceration. While that was true, we have all had conversations with him about who he was versus who he is now. I'd like to touch a little bit on both today. First, who Robert was. He was a survivor. Robert spent his entire childhood surviving. He was born to a woman with mental health issues who couldn't take care of him. Robert and his mom traveled the streets homeless between Mississippi and Chicago with no food and no money. So Robert became a juvenile pickpocket, being schooled by the neighborhood kids on how to do it correctly. He was also a drug dealer. He began selling drugs to make ends meet for himself and his mom, even finding success when he was able to get them an apartment that he paid for. He then became a robber. Robert began, he graduated from pickpocketing to drug dealing and robbing other drug dealers of both drugs and money. This is what caused him to enter the Mississippi prison system at the young age of 16. He essentially grew up in Parchman Prison. He continued those type of crimes after he was released from Parchman because it was really all he knew. That's what led to the incident that caused the situation that we're here for today. The thought that he was going to die in custody caused him to make some very rash decisions that December, decisions that he's already told you he regrets even to this day. Robert doesn't deny any of those labels. He embraces them as they are now his testimony. They are the stories, they fuel the stories that he tells the young men that he meets coming into this prison. Who that Robert was, that Yogi was, fuels every decision that Robert McKee makes today. In 2007, Robert had a conversation with his mother, who told him to get an education so he could go out in the world and do good one day, something she always believed that he was capable of. Robert lost his mother a few weeks later. Today is actually his mother's birthday. That conversation fueled every decision Robert made after that. As he told you, he was put into solitary for approximately 12 years, where he wasn't allowed to do anything. He was sitting in the cell alone, and that was the first time he was able to truly rest and think about who he was and who he wanted to be. Robert began advocating for the ability to attend church, and even after the pastor stopped showing up to solitary, he advocated for the ability to attend church services in other areas of the prison. He also began writing letters so he could access education and get released from lockdown, promising he would do well, and that's exactly what he's done. Robert struggles with how to tell you who he is now because he doesn't want this board to ever think that he's trivializing what he did or the negative impact he had on so many lives. He's not going to tell you, so I will. Who Robert is now is a college graduate. Robert was released from solitary in 2016 and immediately went to work. He got his GED and began taking every class available. He also has an associate's and bachelor's degree from the Bible College. He would be working towards a master's, but it's my understanding that they lost the funding for the program. He's also a pastor and a spiritual advisor. Robert has a relationship with God unlike most. He works hard at bringing the word of God to those who need it in this prison, but also outside of this prison. He regularly sends sermons to people via JPay, including me. And it's through those sermons that you can see Robert's heart for God and his passion for God's work. He's an inmate counsel. While being a pastor and spiritual advisor is without a doubt what Robert considers his most important work, inmate counsel substitute runs a very close second. Robert has assisted in 15 people getting evidentiary hearings and 5 people getting to go home. Those people include Mr. D, who he brought to me a few summers ago. I'd like to tell you that story because it shows Robert's heart. Mr. D was set to go on medical parole because the board couldn't find his family. He was bedridden. Robert brought me Mr. D's packet one afternoon when I was here on an attorney visit, and it was just a couple of days before Mr. D was set to go on the board. Between us and members of my staff, we found Mr. D's family, and they were more than willing to have him paroled to them. Because of Robert's advocacy, Mr. D spent his last years with his brother, his daughters, and his nieces, a chance he probably would not have had otherwise. Sadly, he died recently, but I know that Mr. D is watching today with pride as we tell you about the Robert that he knew and loved. Robert is also an educator. He went from being a diligent student to becoming the facilitator for many classes here. Y'all can see through the certificates in his parole packet that he facilitates a lot of the classes from the JC's Club. He also facilitates a parole class, helping people come before the board. He's been through the New Men program as a student, but he is also now a peer support counselor. What he doesn't like to mention is that he created part of the curriculum that the New Men program uses. As an educator and facilitator, Robert works to help others learn new paths, hopefully leading to their own freedom in the future. Robert is also a mentor. He's now one of the top mentors in the reentry program. And while he's recognized for that work often, even before he became a mentor 2.5 years ago, he was mentoring in an unofficial capacity, showing others what walking a path that's 180 degrees from where you were looks like, showing others what the right thing looks like. As you can see from the many letters from the Angola community, both staff and offenders in his packet, Robert is both relied on and respected. He's not just a mentor, but he often de-escalates arguments between offenders. He can calm people and come to a resolution when staff are unable to do so. A husband, a father, a grandfather, and a friend. Robert wears all of those labels with pride. And as you can see just from the people who are here, which is a small part of his community, he has a huge community of support, not just a family, but friends who've become family. In summary, while Robert's past shows a violent man doing things that put innocent people in danger, that's not who he is today. The Robert that sits before this board is remorseful for the past and hopeful for the future. He walks the path God laid for him, making positive choices in a place where it would be much easier to make negative ones. He's been doing so since before his parole eligibility arose. He knew he needed to be different, and he's done the work to change his life. Now all he needs is mercy from this board. On a final note, I'd like to note that the last board unanimously said that there was no rehabilitation left here for Robert to do. Mr. Roche was the lone vote against him, and he noted that he was voting no only because he wanted Robert to do a little more time. Yet Robert comes before the board with a slew of new certificates. He could have sat back and waited for another board, but he did not. He continued to work. He holds no less than 3 jobs and works diligently at every one. He continues to both take and teach classes. He continues to work to better himself. We ask the board to recognize that Robert McKee is no longer a threat to public safety and give him the chance to change the world on the other side of the gates the way he has on this side. We humbly ask you to grant Robert parole under whatever conditions you see fit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. McKee, would you answer Mr. Freeman's questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. McKee, I was on your board last time. I think your attorney and the people that spoke on your behalf have knocked out most of the questions I would have. You've done great with your community service in the prison. Very good conduct from the warden. Where are you going to live after the parole project?
With my wife, Yolanda McKee, in Violet, Louisiana.
Okay, so you're going to be living back in Louisiana.
Yes,
And
sir.
just briefly, don't really get into it, but tell me what impact you think you had on victims.
On the victims?
On the victim.
Sir, the impact I had on the victims is immeasurable. I think I rerouted their life, caused them to feel unsafe in a world where they should have felt safe. I feel that those random acts did irreparable harm to the victim.
Right. And therefore you realize that you do have victim opposition. You have opposition from the deputies, and you do have other law enforcement opposition. I just wanted to state that for the record. I have no further questions. Like I say, my panel, I'll listen to any other questions I have that I have.
Thank you.
No question.
Mrs. Stacy.
We're talking about victims. And so
Yeah.
I have 2 letters from the officers of that day. And I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read little excerpts from it, okay? Because they asked it to be read. Stacy Cochran, she said she couldn't join us today because she couldn't go again through the horror that day. And it's expressed in her impact statement. And so I'm just going to read a little excerpt from it. Thank you for giving me a chance to express how I feel about the possibilities of Mr. McKee's being released. Since being contacted, I was forced to reflect on a very different time in my life and the life of my children. So there's some more people. After that day, I never saw people the same way. He stole from me my blindness in seeing all people as good first. Bogalusa is a small town. It was big news. My children were forced to talk about it many times. My daughter had nightmares for months, and my son built traps around the house to keep the bad man away, and he would check them several times a day. For years, I was plagued with nightmares. I replayed what happened over and over again in a different way, trying to have a different outcome. I felt guilt for not stopping him from creating more victims. For months, I would have phantom pain in the back of my head where he placed the barrel of the gun. Now, you may have written this, and she may not know this, an accountability letter, because she mentions here, never was a letter ever placed in the box from him from the prison on his behalf trying to ask forgiveness. As a Christian, I forgive him anyway. I'm telling you that I still believe in justice, and give a large portion of my life, and gave a large portion of my life to get justice for others. One last thing. Prior to his death, the deputy that Mr. McKee battered and stole his gun approached me. He had tears in his eyes. He said he was so sorry and he felt so guilty for not stopping Mr. McKee. The pain in his eyes still haunts me. He suffered even years later. I never spoke to him, to someone. I need someone to speak for him. Please consider the long list of Mr. McKee's victims. Thank you for taking the time to read this. So that was from her, and this is from Ms. Sorrell, or Officer Sorrell. She said when she saw you, she recognized the man, Robert McKee. My shift had arrested him a few months earlier on an aggravated battery where he had encountered an elderly female in her residence and hogtied her before stealing from her residence. Then she remembers Stacy, this other officer who was a rookie officer, and seeing the gun pressed to her temple. And she watched as you pulled the gun from Stacy's holster. McKee had a premeditated attack. The transport deputy missed the jail weapon, and Mr. McKee used to inflict many blunt force blows to the deputy's face and head, rendering him unconscious. A most disturbing factor was this deputy was such a sweet older man I knew as Mr. Irvin. I would guess he was in his 70s. He did physically recover from his injury, but the emotional and mental trauma from this incident ended his policing career. She says she can still hear the gunshots being fired directly at you, and she remembers the wreck. And her final words are, Mr. McKee is a dangerous man. If he is granted parole, his next victims may not be as lucky and still have a voice. I strongly believe he will reoffend. Please allow the judge's sanctions to remain in place and keep him in prison. He is a threat to humanity. So those are your victims' awareness. I don't have any questions, but I did want to honor their request and read their parts of their story. All right, thank you. You should tell us any questions.
No questions.
I don't see any other questions. We are prepared to vote, Mr. Freeman.
Okay, I voted to grant last time, Mr. McKee. I'm gonna vote to grant again. You've done nothing but, like your lawyer said, done more. Since then, I realized that, you had some very, very serious incidents. You never did fire that weapon, did you?
No, sir.
Oh,
Wait a minute, you fired it.
4 shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Police report says 4 shots were fired.
By him.
May I address this question?
yeah.
Okay, so I have gone through the entire file and I do realize that the police reports say that he fired some shots. Robert does not recall firing shots. There is a witness statement that says that they saw Robert firing shots into the air. And it was 3 shots specifically named by that particular witness. So I'm not.
Jumped into the van and tried to run me over with her van. I shot my shotgun into the vehicle. It missed him. It went a little bit high, but I was in the process of running to keep him from running over me. And then he fired several shots at me after he turned and continued.
Obviously, you know, it's been a long time. I think the trauma of the day may have just caused confusion. And so Robert does not recall firing those shots at all. But as I said, a witness said he shot into the air, not at the deputies.
I mean, he had the opportunity to kill the deputy in the bathroom. He had the opportunity to kill the deputy outside. He had the opportunity to kill the people when he went to the car.
Yes, sir.
Regardless, I think you've done well. My vote today is to grant to the parole project and to follow all of their recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Tillis.
My vote also is to grant. I think you've done well. You've set a good example. My vote is to grant to the Louisiana Parole Project.
Mrs. Stapleton.
My vote is going to be to deny. District Attorney said that he strongly opposes this vicious career criminal tried to kill a police officer. Chief of Police is opposed, Attorney General is opposed, and then of course you've heard your victims, they're opposed too, and they still suffer from that, the events of that day.
Mr. Barrow.
I'm gonna also vote to deny based on the poor criminal record prior to the offense. And during this offense, it put many lives in danger. The strong victim opposition still after these years, the strong law enforcement opposition that comes from the sheriff, the DA, the chief, and the judge, and insufficient time served for such a violent crime against law enforcement officials. He served less than half of the imposed sentence.
Mr. McKee, my vote today would be the same as it was the last time I saw you, to grant your parole. I think, and congratulations on continuing with your college degree. I asked you to do that last time you did. I'm very impressed that you didn't let the denial last time stop the good work that you're doing. I do not believe that you're Yogi anymore. I do not believe you're a threat to public safety. You seem genuinely remorseful and you understand the impact you have on your victims. Great family support, a good transition plan, and positive remarks by the warden. Unfortunately, today it requires a unanimous vote. So the outcome today is that the parole is being denied. Don't give up. Good luck.
Thank you.
And there you have it, a denial. And I guess that we'll see him again in another 2 years for another bite at the apple. You know, the last hearing was 2023. Now it's 2025. Look, it's it's interesting. It really is interesting because it's like on one hand you see the case and you hear him talk about the crimes and he is quite elaborate about it. He doesn't seem to try to hide anything, but then the moment he gets the opportunity, it's like, oh no, I didn't fire the shots. And like followed by his attorney, and it's like, just admit to it. I mean, we heard it from the cop who you shot at. Miss Stapleton actually just finished reading the letter reading from what the victim said about the shooting. And then his attorney, who I dislike so much. I don't know if those of you who are really familiar with this channel, we've seen her represent other people before, and she just gives me the hibby jibbies. And it's like that type of defense. There was one witness who said he fired shots in the air, and it was just, he's so confused. It's like, you committed the crime, just admit it. But then there's other things that seem that just didn't add up for me that I caught on in the second hearing that might have missed in the first, which was like, he did talk about it. He said, well, look, he robbed a narcotics dealer, and apparently did something to his mom when he robbed it, gets into prison. They're like, you messed with the wrong dude. So yeah, they're beating him bad. 9 guys, right? They're really, but then it seems there's an elderly CO or sheriff's deputy that is taken a kindness to him, so much to the extent that he says, you got to go to the hospital, man. You need help. When he's at the hospital and it's premeditated, this is what they're saying. They're saying he had a shiv on him or a weapon on him, a metal thing on him, that he claims he had it just to protect himself from the prisoners. That could be true. But he beats this man who liked him and loved him, who took care of him, took his gun, and it seems by all accounts, look at it, he's a big man. And he would have been young in his prime then. There's no reason. The second you have the gun, you didn't need to beat him. And, he didn't care at that point. He gets out. You see all the craziness he goes into. And he says the truth, but he also paints himself as the victim and paints himself as just a good guy. All he wanted, even by saying the little things like, when I hit that car, I wanted to stop and check on them, but I had to get to Mississippi. And it's like, oh, come on, shut up. You know, the only thing that I do buy is, look, hey, if you're in this jail, I guess he wasn't in prison yet. If you're in jail and there are 9 guys that are just beating the crap out of you, you might be in some type of panic mode. But again, you could have just sent yourself to PC. I know it's easy for me to say, but what he did is clear. It's an impulsive, dangerous, scary thing that makes no sense. And it was a complete act of terror. You steal the gun. You disarm, take another gun, you shoot at deputies, then you go to break into the car, and then also that was the time he said, oh, and then I realized I saw the fear in their eyes, and I put the gun on the roof. And there's just a little bit too much for me that gets me a little, but on the flip side, how do you go through 12 years in solitary confinement, come out the other side and seem to be so positive, get so much done, build a network, and take all these programs? I got to say that's impressive. I don't know who can go out of 12 years of solitary and not just completely lose your mind. Yeah, it's funny when you go 2 years and you lose a vote. Before, he only needed Mr. No Way Roche. Now he lost 2. That's pretty crazy. But it's like, the victims wrote a note, they didn't make an appearance. But it's interesting, the one that touched me was listening to them talk about how the old deputy felt so much guilt about this, and that he had to have his long career, where he seemed like a genuinely good man, who cared for him, and then his long career to end in a way of pain and guilt over allowing him to escape and wondering the what ifs. It's just so awful and so useless. And it's quite interesting to see what an aggravated escape is like. He makes Antoine Macy and all the others look like Boy Scouts. They just broke out of there. Man, he did a real escape. So, as you can see, people in the parole process can get over it. I think that would be the positive note for the Antoine Macy's and the likes. He really went on a rampage, and 20 years later, he almost got paroled. Now let's go over the information Lady Holly pulled up on this. And again, if you want to see hearings where we do follow inmates, check out the Return of playlist. But yeah, he has go through the article, and then what's interesting, in 2005, he has a lawsuit against the prison basically claiming that his extradition is kidnapping. So he's extradition, I guess, from Mississippi to Louisiana's kidnapping, and the same year the lawsuit was dismissed. Lady Holly writes, shocker. I don't think we'll go through that, but can you imagine? You're so desperate. I guess when you're in solitary, you have nothing to do. You'll say, "Oh, you can't, do anything to try to get out of that prison." Let's go to this written back in 2001. Can you believe 2001 was that many years? 24 years ago. Where does time go? So, an inmate who escaped during a trip to hospital stole a policewoman's van and was finally chased down in Mississippi is back behind bars. It happened Saturday when Robert was taken from Parish Jail in Franklinton to an emergency room at St. Tammany Regional Medical Center. by the sheriff's deputy. He was the sheriff's deputy. Officers gave the account McKee in jail on charges of aggravated burglary, second-degree kidnapping, overpowered Sanderson in the bathroom, badly beating him and taking his gun. He then disarmed an off-duty female officer and exchanged gunfire with officers. I love how his attorney tried to say, he didn't exchange gun. Oh, he shot in the air. I love that shot in the air. Oh. Bogalusa Police Chief Jerry Agnew saw officers stop shooting because of the crowd of people outside the hospital. The fleeing inmate took the policewoman's van and sped off towards Louisiana, Mississippi State in line, pursued by officers. There were several life and death situations. I was pleased with the restraint of our officers showed. The van was damaged in a wreck at an intersection but continued on to Mississippi. Once the van quit, McKee abandoned it and allegedly attempted to carjack an elderly couple at gunpoint. Before police subdued him. The entire incident lasted less than 20 minutes. Authorities said so he basically got a year for each minute. But he got more than that. He got 60 years. And I think his good time date, I think Mr. Nasa said 2060. So he's got to just keep coming back and hope for parole. Authorities said they will likely charge McKee with 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder of a police officer, armed robbery, carjacking, hit and run, aggravated criminal damage to property, aggravated flight from an officer, disarming a police officer, other local charges pending. And what's crazy, he turned a jail sentence that probably would have been, you know, he obviously would have been out a long time ago by now, but turned it into a 60-year sentence, which is essentially life. I am impressed, you know, everything aside, it's still impressive to see what he's done because it's so not everyone can do what he's done, which is, you know, I do acknowledge that. And as Mr. Noe Roche said, they don't believe he's a threat to anyone else anymore. I could have seen him getting paroled. I wouldn't have been against it. He served so much time. And you know, he's going on 25 years and he didn't kill anyone. He's not a chomo. And if he's not a threat to other people, and the victims didn't show up, they wrote just the letters. But what do you think? Let's go to the facts of the day. In Georgia, owner of mules may not allow their animals to roam around Athens, Clark County unsupervised. Georgia. At least you won't see any stray mules in Athens. I don't know. What a random law. Like, where do they come up with this stuff? Georgia. I don't know. Maybe it's a peaches thing. Maybe it's about peaches. That could make sense. I don't want the mules trampling on peaches. I don't know. With that, I'll let you go.
There are 3 reasons that I think the state of Louisiana incarcerates an individual. First reason is isolation. They want to isolate that individual because of his negative behavior. The second reason is to rehabilitate this individual so when he comes out, that he will be a productive member of society. I don't think there's any need to isolate you anymore, simply because I think you've been rehabilitated. You have a history of violence, and that violence has kept you in trouble most of your adult life. You have a long, high history of criminal activity, and most of that is of violent nature. You have 2 felony convictions in the state of Mississippi. But I don't think we need to isolate you anymore. I don't think we can rehabilitate you any more than you are. But we come to the third reason that we incarcerate an individual, and that's retribution. Retribution for your crime. You have a 65-year sentence. And basically, I think it was a fair sentence. You have not served 1/3 of that sentence. You served 21 years.